In the 33rd episode of the American Reveille Podcast, I discuss how Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has sold out to the radical left. Attempting to manipulate you with his silver tongue and holier-than-thou attitude, The Rock proves to be the perfect patsy for the Harris-Biden administration to pump their propaganda through. I not only discuss how he's manipulating you, but also what he stands for since endorsing Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Everyone has a price. Even The Rock, yet even I couldn't have predicted how low he would stoop. Find out just how low on the 33rd episode of the American Reveille Podcast, next. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Monday, September 28th. I am James Lane, and this is the 33rd episode of the American Reveille Podcast. If you smell what The Rock is cooking, and I certainly do. I smell it, Dwayne, and it smells, folks, like radical left-wing bullshit. What am I talking about? Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has basically sold his soul to the devil. The Great One has shown his true colors, proving once and for all that traumatic brain injuries certainly do affect political comprehension. Being at the receiving end of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of steel chair shots to his head have rattled his brains and stifled his understanding of reality. Oh yes, Dwayne Johnson, the nicest guy in Hollywood, has endorsed Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, proving that he never actually left the pro wrestling business. What do I mean? Well, like pro wrestling, Dwayne Johnson is 100% fake. So, The Rock put out a ridiculous statement on Instagram Sunday, and I want to break some of it down because he's using persuasive marketing tactics that many folks won't catch on to. These are manipulation tactics, make no mistake about it, and I want to make this crystal clear. The Rock hasn't been a blue-collar guy, if he ever was, in decades, literally decades. This guy lives in the same pampered, networked, and political wealth bubble that all of these suits belong to. Just because he takes the time to put out some consistent videos and pretends to open up to you doesn't mean that he's being sincere. This is a guy that spent his entire career pretending to be someone else. The calluses on his hands at this point, they're well lotioned, and his toes, they're well manicured as he makes his statement to you from his ivory pedestal. Folks, The Rock had this to say on Sunday, quote, "Look, I've got friends in all parties, but the one thing we can always agree on is the conversation and the dialogue, and where that conversation lands is always the most critical part. Now, this is something that I've certainly not done in the past, so I'm going to go big. You guys know me. If I go big." So folks, this right here, this is some dark and dirty manipulation. The first thing he does is neutralize himself and create an environment where you'll be more susceptible to influence. It's a magician's trick. Look, I've got friends in all parties, and it's important we all talk about this stuff, and we can agree on that, can't we? He's setting you up right there. He's taking the fight out of you, opening you up. This isn't something I've never done before, so I'm going to go big. You know me, I go big. He's now influencing you by subconsciously letting you know that you can trust him and that when he makes a choice, it's usually right. This is Psych 101, folks. Let's keep reading. Quote, "As a registered independent for years, now with centrist ideologies, I do feel that Vice President Biden and Senator Harris are the best choice to lead our country, and I'm endorsing them to become president and vice president." So here's the meat. This is a showman working the undecideds and independents. He's one of you, as he says, and then he directly states what he feels, giving you the underlying feeling that his confidence equates intelligence in his decision-making. So he neutralizes you and opens you up. He builds trust and susceptibility and then hits you with a statement of manipulation. These aren't things that the average person knows how to do. These are things you learn over time when controlling large crowds. such as one would do at Madison Square Garden for the heavyweight championship of the world, or possibly as the leading man of 100 top movies. Do you really think there's no value in this for The Rock? A multi-millionaire trying to build networks and relationships to sustain his family line long after his eventual death? These are things the average American doesn't concern themselves with, but that doesn't make them any less accurate. So the Croc puts out his video and endorses pee-pad and knee-pad. Is that it? Of course it isn't. Dwayne waterboards us with a stupid conversation between himself, Biden, and Harris, where he pathetically panders to them while giving us absolutely no explanation for his choices. Rock, I thought you were better than this. Guys, take a listen.
Hey!
Hi!
Hey, guys. I got to tell you, well, it is so good seeing you guys. Senator Harris, it's a pleasure to finally see you and finally meet you.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to see you. I'm a huge fan of everything from Fast and Furious, all of them, to Jumanji. So thank you for your work.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for your work. Let me start off by saying, guys, I've been a lucky guy over the years in my life and my career to have been part of and participated in some real defining moments. And I have never publicly endorsed a presidential candidate or a vice presidential candidate in my life, over my career. So I figured let's kick this conversation off this way by me officially publicly endorsing you both to become president and vice president of our great country.
Thanks,
Oh, that's
Thank
fantastic.
you.
Thank you. That's
Means a great
incredible.
deal to us, for real. Thank you.
Really. Thank you.
You guys are both obviously experienced to lead. You've done great things. Joe, you've had such an incredible career. You've led, in my opinion, with great compassion and heart and drive, but also soul. And you and I talked about that in the past and how important soul is. And Kamala, I'm going to embarrass you just for a little bit because I'm going to talk a little bit about your amazing experience. And you have been an attorney, a district attorney, a state attorney, a U.S. senator, smart, tough. I've seen you in those hearings. And in my opinion, you are a certified badass.
I'm honored and thank you for that. That's a huge compliment from you.
You're welcome.
All right. I can't listen to this crap anymore. I just can't. Do any of you know what The Rock is talking about? This sounds like a cultist ass-kissing convention. If The Rock thinks that Biden is a leader, then I challenge him to explain to the public just what Biden has done to demonstrate his leadership, other than not being Donald Trump, apparently. Since The Rock is so experienced with leadership, even though he's always worked for somebody else, since The Rock thinks he's such a boss because he has physical riches, then how can he explain all of the horrible things Biden and Harris have done and stood for? You know, it's really frustrating that these people think we're so stupid just because we work our asses off, be it in a plant or a factory or an office or even a mill, wherever we work. They think that we're just so stupid and we won't see or pay attention to the games they play up there in their castles while we turn the gears of this society. But unfortunately, winning becomes an addiction for these people, and it clouds their judgment of what constitutes wrong and right, up and down in the real world. And existing in a world dictated by trending topics and social media analytics, The Rock has lived in a time warp since catapulting to success in the 1990s. Biden has never been poor, never had to scrape, never had to save, and Harris maneuvered her way through the channels of power, making decisions in the best interest of her career instead of what's constitutional and best for the people. You know, The Rock should have spent some time studying if all he's worried about is an image and not an actual policy, because if it actually read anything at all about Biden and Harris, he would have to know how evil they actually are. So, in my estimation, that leaves us with two possible assumptions. Either Dwayne Johnson is an absolute imbecile and isn't intelligent enough to understand at all what is happening, or, and this is most likely the answer, Dwayne Johnson is unfortunately just another brainwashed asshole living in a dream world and profiting off the backs of the common people. He's just another paid actor in the Democrats' pathetic attempt to sway public opinion and lie directly to the people. So when The Rock says that he supports Biden and Harris, he's saying he supports the 1994 crime bill that led to surges in African-American incarceration across the United States, many of them wrongful incarceration. He's saying that he supports a man who has lied on camera multiple times about his credentials. He's saying he supports a woman who's kept inmates in jail on purpose and forced them to fight California wildfires based upon laws from the days of slavery. He's saying he supports a woman who fought to fund transgender reassignment surgery for inmates with taxpayer dollars. The Rock says when he endorses Biden and Harris that he believes Joe Biden is 100% cognitively capable of running the greatest country on the face of the planet as he stumbles over his own words and insults hardworking Americans. He's saying he supports a man who expects black folks to bend a knee and vote for the Democratic Party no matter what. By endorsing Harris, he's saying he supports riots, he supports indoctrination, and he supports the burning of American cities. This comes straight from Harris's mouth. Quote, "Nothing that we have achieved that has been about progress, in particular around civil rights, has come without a fight. And so I always am going to interpret these protests as an essential component of evolution in our country, as an essential component or mark of a real democracy," end quote. So let me get this right, Kamala Harris. That's 2 police officers shot in Louisville last Wednesday. A police officer hit in the head with a steel bat in Seattle on Saturday. 2 police officers shot multiple times in Los Angeles the other week. National emergencies called in Portland over the weekend after more than 100 days of rioting. Shootings going up dramatically in Chicago and New York City, including murder, of course. People are being dragged from their homes and vehicles. They are being beaten. In some instances, they are being raped. And like I said before, in some instances, they are being murdered. So, according to Biden and Harris, and now according to The Rock, violence and death are an essential component of democracy. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, but you don't have to say it to be associated with it. You are guilty by association and have proved that you don't care about the future of this great country. No, you don't give a damn. Just like the Fast and the Furious franchise, enough is enough. But you know, at this point, nothing should surprise us. On last week's podcast, I mentioned that I believe Judge Lagoa would become the nominee for the Supreme Court, and humbly I must say that I was wrong. So with that being said, congratulations, Amy Coney Barrett. May your nomination be swift and painless, though Democrats probably don't plan to drink down this medicine with a spoonful of sugar. This is a woman who's against late-term abortion, and the Democrats, including Biden and Harris, are fighting to stop her from being confirmed to the Supreme Court. The Rock endorses Biden and Harris, and therefore, in my opinion, endorses late-term abortion. You hear that? The Rock apparently hates babies. You see how this works, guys? It works both ways. So, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we're going to take a quick break from crapping all over The Rock to hear a word from our sponsor, which, of course, is still me. Yep, I am the sponsor. So, I mean, technically, we could say that capitalism allows me to be the sponsor. So, the American Reveille Podcast is brought to you by capitalism, kicking the crap out of socialism since, like, forever. And speaking of socialism, I'm fighting massive censorship on some of my platforms. So please, 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 don't forget to talk about this podcast and share it around. So, guys, don't go anywhere. The American Reveille Podcast will be right back.
The American Reveille Podcast with James Lane would like to take a moment to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to tune into the show. It's because of great fans like you that we strive to deliver the best quality content one can create as fast as one can fling the pen. With that being said, a good little boy never misses his opportunity to sell himself, and though James would never ask you for your money, he would like to let you know that if you absolutely love this podcast, the writing, the art, its production, anything, please do us the personal favor of liking, sharing, tweeting, texting, and talking about this podcast. James Lane is a father, a husband, a U.S. Navy veteran, and is personally committed to the success of the American Reveille Podcast. Please email James Lane directly at podcast@AmericanReveille.com, or please visit our website at www.AmericanReveille.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back to the American Reveille Podcast, and of course, we're back to demonstrating that The Rock has become a jabroni. So before the break, we talked about how the Democrats are playing every dirty trick in the book to stall, cease, and desist the nomination and subsequent confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court of the United States, which is the highest court in the land. Now, we all know there's nothing the left can legally do to stop the Senate from confirming this judge. So instead, they're trying to trick the American people into thinking that Trump wants to take their health care away. Biden loves to use COVID-19 as his political tool. Hot off the Epoch Times, Biden says Trump's Supreme Court pick would undo Obamacare. Quote, President Trump sees a chance to fulfill his explicit mission to steal away the vital protections of the Affordable Care Act from countless families who have come to rely on them for their health, their financial security, and the lives of those they love. It should come as no surprise that President Trump would nominate Judge Amy Coney Barrett. Complications from COVID-19 like lung scarring and heart damage could become the next flood of pre-existing conditions used as an excuse to deny coverage to millions. The American people understand the urgency of this moment. They are already voting in droves because they know that their health care hangs in the balance. End quote. That was the Epoch Times quoting Biden, and it came straight from the horse's mouth. I don't understand why they think a health care plan that millions of people can't afford or understand is the solution when the President of the United States is currently developing a solid replacement for the proven failure that is the Affordable Care Act. Affordable is the irony of it all. Why are the Democrats against lowering drug prices and healthcare costs? Why is The Rock against helping the little guy? President Trump said, quote, we've got to get rid of the Obamacare mandate. The central point, it's no good. It's too expensive. You don't get your doctor. Obamacare is terrible. But if we can end Obamacare and come up with a much cheaper system, we are going to have a much better plan. End quote. Folks, the Democrats act like this is some big secret. They act like the right wants to see millions and millions of people go without health care, and that's just an outright lie. It's leftist propaganda, plain and simple. What we want to do is repeal a plan that originally made it illegal to not purchase it, a plan for health care that jacked up the price for everyone while driving the quality of that plan way down. Why is it that these lefties are so afraid of change? They pretend like their ideas are moving society forward when in fact all they do is regurgitate failed relics of the past. President Trump is changing things for the better, making America great again and putting things back to the way they were constitutionally supposed to be. So why are people like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson so afraid of this? I know why. They're afraid because President Trump is returning the power to the people. And those folks we've been talking about the whole time, they're not part of the people. They're part of the privileged class. Like I've said time and time again, this is a power play pitting rich and poor against each other. There's no actual race war taking place. Ask yourself if The Rock feels oppressed while his minions set up his mobile gym for him on the set of his latest movie. No, he doesn't feel oppressed, folks. But do you know who does? People on the right feel oppressed. We've been beaten down. We've been trampled on. We've been silenced and shut up. It's taking a mental toll on people. Even Trump's former campaign manager, Brad Parscale, suffered a mental health crisis, and the leftists, the very people Dwayne Johnson supports, they mocked this mental health crisis. From the Daily Wire on Sunday, leftists mock Brad Parscale following a report on mental health. Trump campaign responds in statement. Leftists mocked and made derisive comments on Sunday evening in response to news reports that former Trump campaign manager Brad Parscale was hospitalized in Florida following threats he allegedly made about harming himself. Quote, Brad Parscale is a member of our family and we all love him, Tim Murtaugh, director of communications for the Trump campaign, said in a statement. Quote, we are ready to support him and his family in any way possible. The disgusting personal attacks from Democrats and disgruntled rhinos have gone too far, and they should be ashamed of themselves for what they've done to this man and his family, end quote. So when they say attacks from Democrats, I know what you're thinking. I know you're thinking that some dumb kids on Twitter are talking crap or some YouTubers made a dumb, hurtful video. But no, folks, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Democrat congressional candidates backed by people like Harris and Biden. You know, the same Harris and Biden The Rock endorsed over the weekend. Bob Lynch, who, if you allow me, let me describe him for you. He looks like Portland, Oregon, though he's running for District 116 in Florida. This is a guy wearing a light blue tweed suit while sporting a man bun. I told you he looked like Portland, Oregon. He literally stated on Twitter, quote, F Brad Parscale, the business of separating innocent refugee babies from their parents, stripping women's rights, selling our country to the Russians, and on should take a toll. It sure did on those innocent families. Killing is Trump and DeSantis's business, end quote. This is a guy running for the United States Congress, someone who, if elected, will do nothing more than give power and credibility to people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and those others following that Marxist far-left cult that's been running through our country lately. Who talks trash about someone who was Baker acted for a mental health emergency? The same people who support criminals like Biden and Harris running for president, of course. Unfortunately, like a rock, The Rock is too dense to scratch beneath the surface and see what Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and the radicalized Democrat Party actually stand for now. This is a perfect example of judging a book by its cover, that thing they used to teach kids not to do. On the one hand, you have a brash, no-nonsense businessman with a bullhead and a big mouth, and he's getting results. He's getting stuff done. He's making things happen, and you just don't like how he talks. While on the other hand, you have this other guy who's literally a dementia-ridden corpse. He's a criminal who's been selling his country out for 47 years, but on the surface says all the things you want to hear, or at least tries to. Or at least you can tell yourself that, and at the end of the day, dumb rich celebrities who live in a bubble promote voting for Biden because of just that, judging a book by its cover due to a lack of any effort in actually doing any research whatsoever. These people read talking points and collect their gigantic paycheck. So now The Rock gets to join the likes of other bitching and moaning celebrities in TV land that just have to do something to stay relevant and put their uneducated 2 cents in the mix. Listen to some of these crazy pants quotes about Amy Coney Barrett from these wannabe celebrities. Quote, Trump appoints female neocon judge who pledges behind the scenes to kill ACA and pre-existing conditions during a pandemic, and Roe versus Wade to go. Sick children will suffer because medicine's just too expensive. No money for dialysis. Heart cancer, kidney diseases. If people don't get treatment, they'll die. Guys, that was Cher, apparently an expert now in writing healthcare acts and disregarding facts. So what else is out there? Oh, from the irrelevant Bette Midler, quote, do you think they tried very hard to get Donald to read anything about hashtag Amy Coney Barrett, or did they just say, quote, we found a lady Mike Pence during a commercial break on OANN? Apparently, folks, all of my mother's favorite singers from my childhood hate our president. The point I'm trying to make here is simple. How do they know? How and why do they think the president wants to do all of these horrible things to Americans when he actually did none of them during his first term? Why would they think that the president is destroying healthcare and murdering puppies? I'll say it again for everyone to hear. If rich and wealthy celebrities and politicians that haven't employed and worked with regular people seem outdated, out of touch, and like they exist in a bubble, it's because they do. Why don't we put everything together so The Rock can have an easier time understanding what he signed up for? He publicly came out and endorsed Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. By endorsing Bernie Biden and Herr Harris, The Rock then associates himself with a duo more wishy-washy than pro wrestling is today. All of the sneaking, the conniving, the fake news, Obamagate, Hunter Biden's weakness for hookers and blow, Kamala Harris and her thirst for power, riots that are destroying our cities, Democratic mayors and governors allowing their people to die, Joe Biden's mental decline and massive Democratic corruption coupled with Marxist infiltration. Folks, at the end of the day, it just makes sense that The Rock would become the bad guy. I mean, that always was his best character, wasn't it? And 2020 itself has proven to be written like one long bad WrestleMania with ridiculous surprise after ridiculous surprise. The only difference is that in the real world, what people like Dwayne Johnson say, it means something to millions of people. And when celebrities don't educate themselves with factual information, their words end up harming the society that hoisted them up to stardom in the first place. So, Rock, I think it's time you should heed some of your own advice. Why don't you know your role and shut your Rudy Poo candy ass mouth? Because you obviously have no idea what you're friggin' talking about. Anyway, folks, now that I have to keep my eye out for The Rock showing up at my house and kicking the shit out of me, I want to change the subject before we end the show. So over the weekend, Facebook punished us for sharing what they considered to be fake news, and because of that, fewer people are now able to see my content. So as you know, I source everything I produce, and I work very hard to entertain you guys while still bringing you the real deal, the absolute truth. So because of what happened, I really need your help to get the word out about this podcast and the company in general. So let people know that they can go to www.americanreveille.com and read our articles and share this podcast on all of your social media platforms for me. Everyone's work right now seems to have a right-wing underground as well. So if you have one of those, let them know about the American Reveille. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please give us a 5-star rating as it strokes the algorithm and moves us up in the rankings. The higher we rank, the more people hear the show, the bigger impact we have against the lefties and their cheap communist propaganda. You can find all of my social media, podcasts, and website links in the description section below. And if you have any feedback for me or just have a question you've been wanting to ask me, please feel free to shoot me an email at jameslane@americanreveille.com. So ladies and gentlemen, in just over a month, the people of the United States will hold the most important election in the history of our nation, an election that's bound to be wrought with historical tensions. Will you allow your most important freedom, your right to vote? Will you allow that freedom to be manipulated by mentally inept celebrities who can't comprehend what it is to walk a mile in your shoes? Or will you grow a pair and vote for the only person who can save the United States of America from further sinking into utter chaos and uncertainty? President Donald J. Trump. We'll certainly find out, won't we? So until next Monday, folks, I'm James Lane, and this was the 33rd episode of the American Reveille Podcast. Peace.